Hi everyone, we are back with another awesome session about open source. If you haven't watched our session on Git and GitHub video, I hope you give it a watch, since it will help you to understand this session more easily. So, moving forward, hope all of you are well and safe. Today we will be learning about what does open source mean, why do people open source their work, why to do open source, where to start doing open source, how to start doing open source, and at the epilogue we will be learning some tips to contributing to the open source. So why to wait? Let's dive in. First of all, what does open source mean? When a project is open source, that means anybody is free to use, study, modify, and distribute your project for any purpose. These permissions are enforced through an open source license. Open source is usually powerful because it lowers the barriers to adoption and collaboration, allowing people to spread and improve projects quickly. Also, because it gives a user a potential to control their own computing related to closed source. For example, a business using open source software has the option to hire someone to make custom improvements to the software, rather than relying exclusively on a closed source vendor's product decisions, which usually happens in case of closed source softwares. Free software projects refers to the same set of projects as open source projects. Sometimes you will also see these terms combined as free and open source software, in short FOSS, or free, libre and open source software, in short FLOSS. Free and libre refer to freedom of the change and more scalability, not the price. Now the question arises, why do people open source their work? There are many reasons why a person or an organization would want to open source a project. Majorly ones include collaboration, adoption and remixing, transparency. Collaboration. Open source projects can accept changes from anybody in the world. Exercism, for example, is a programming exercise platform with over 350 contributors. Adoption and remixing. Open source projects can be used by anyone for nearly any purpose. People can even use it to build other things. WordPress, for example, started as a fork of an existing project called B2. You can check it out on GitHub. Transparency. Anyone can inspect an open source project for errors or inconsistencies. Transparency matters to governments like Bulgaria or the United States, regulated industries like banking or healthcare, and security software like Let's Encrypt. Also, open source isn't just for software either. You can open source like anything, like starting from datasets to books. Now the question is, why to do open source? There are a lot of good reasons. Among them, few are build your confidence as a developer, build your resume, build your professional network, or the main reason, it feels good to give back to a project that you use. Build your confidence as a developer. If you are young, early in your career, or even just starting learning a new programming language, open source is the best way to get started. By contributing to an open source project, you receive immediate feedback on your development and programming skills. You may get even suggestions. This is an invaluable feedback to receive when you're learning something new. Moreover, as you create more pull requests and apply what you learned from previous submissions, you begin to learn how to write good code and submit great pull requests for code review. And second one, build your resume. In addition to building your skills and increasing your confidence, all of your open source contributions are public and demonstrate the skills you have mastered and the projects you have tackled. In fact, your open source profile by itself could provide you with a strong portfolio that sets you apart from other job candidates. Third one, build your professional network. Building a strong professional network can help you achieve your career goals. Learn more about your own or adjacent fields and help with the job search. Contributing to open source is an excellent way to build that network. You join a welcoming community of hundreds or thousands of contributors, interact with like-minded developers in the open source space, and build connections along the way. You might even get introduced to key people in the industry, like the maintainer of a high-profile open source tool. Such relationships can turn into career-changing connections. And lastly, it feels good to give back to a project that you use. Now the question arises, where to start? So, there are actually a lot of summer of code programs focused on bringing more student developers into open source software development, like G-Shock, Google Summer of Code, SOD, Season of Docs, Outreach, and so on. Students work with an open source organization on a timeline on a project during their break. There are also some summer or winter of code programs organized by different universities, like KWOC, Kharagpur Winter of Code, organized by IIT Kharagpur, and Jack Winter of Code, organized by IIT Patna Computer Science Code Club, and so on. There are also open source competitions like Hacktoberfest, Girl Script Summer of Code, and so on. We will be diving a little bit around to check about them. opensourceinternships.herokuapp.com. This is the website where you can check them around. Like these are the Summer of Code programs like G-Shock, and these are open source competitions like Hacktoberfest, Girl Script Summer of Code. These are some Summer of Codes or Winter of Codes organized by different universities like Anzac Winter of Code, Kharagpur Winter of Code. For example, take G-Shock. G-Shock, Google Summer of Code, is a global program focused on bringing more student developers into open source software development. Students work with an open source organization on a 10-week programming project during their break from school. We can also check out their timeline like this. Like this is the timeline of Google Summer of Code, which is held this year, 2021. Same way, we can check different timelines of different programs this way. So, moving forward, the question arises how to start. Now, let's get started with the most interesting step of the day, the implementation part. The step-by-step guide would be, first of all, fork the repository of the project in which you want to contribute by clicking on the fork button on the repo main page in the upper right corner. This will create a copy of this repository in your account. Like we can see, like I have forked from Keshav G2/React to do app in my own GitHub account. Now, clone the forked repository to your machine. Go to your GitHub account, open the forked repository, click on the code button, then click the copy to clipboard icon. Open a terminal. Run the following git command: git clone URL to this data repository which you have forked for this project. Here you are copying the contents of the repository on GitHub to your computer. Then let's open the repo in our system by using the command cd. We can see that we have copied the contents of the repository on GitHub to our computer. Now make sure that your fork is the origin remote. You are going to be synchronizing your local repository with both the project repository on GitHub and your fork also on GitHub. The URLs that point to these repositories are called remotes. More specifically, the project repository is called the upstream remote and your fork is called the origin remote. When you clone your fork, that should have automatically set your fork as the origin remote. Use git remote v to show your current remotes. Okay. You should see the URL of your fork next to the word origin. If you don't see an origin remote, you can add it using git remote add origin URL fork. Then add the project repository at the upstream remote. Go to your fork on GitHub and click the forked from link to return to the project repository. While in the project repository, click the glean, clone or download button and then copy the HTTPS URL. Add the project repository as the upstream remote using git remote add upstream URL of the project. Use git remote v to check that you now have two remotes, an origin that points to your fork and an upstream that points to the project repository. Let's check it out. You can see there are two remotes, one origin that points to your fork and an upstream that points to your project repository. But before you start making any changes to your local file, it's a good practice to first synchronize your local repository with the project repository. Use git pull upstream master to pull any changes from the master branch of the upstream into your local repository. Looks like I forgot to mention the branch for the pull request. In this case, let's check it out. So we can see that there is only one branch, that is main branch. So we will be using that. Git pull upstream main. We can see that it is already up to date. If you forked and cloned the project repository just a minute ago, it is very unlikely that there will be any changes. In which case, Git will report that your local repository is already up to date. But if there are any changes, they will automatically be merged into your local repository. So let's now create a branch using the git checkout command. Git checkout -b. We will be creating a branch to solve an issue. Let's name it readme issue Karan Gupta. Since I, Karan Gupta, will be solving the readme issue in this particular project. Now the branch is created. Now let's open the readme and edit it to show something more precise. I will not be diving into the code part because that's not the topic for today. Let's rephrase the readme as a React application to let the user create, modify, delete a to-do list. That's something more precise. That's all. Let's save it. Then now we had made some changes to the project. Then let's add those changes to the branch you just created using a git add command. Git add dot. Now the changes has been added and ready to be committed. Now commit.changes use the git commit command. Git commit -m for the useful message. Let the message would be edited readme. That's some useful message. We can see that one file changed, 3 insertions, 1 deletion. Okay, then push your changes using the command git push. Git push origin readme issue Karan Gupta. We can see that we had pushed our changes into the origin remote. Okay, that is our forked one. Then if we go to our repository on GitHub, we will see a compare and pull request button. Like you can see, Karan Gupta 042 readme _issue _ Karan Gupta had recent pushes less than a minute ago. Now submit the pull request by clicking on that button, compare and pull request button. When opening a pull request, you are making a request that the project repository pull changes from your fork. You will see that the project repository is listed as the base repository. You can see. And your fork is listed at the head repository. You can check it out here. And you can also see the issue. Like we are comparing the branch readme issue Karan Gupta with the branch main. Before submitting the pull request, you first need to describe the changes you made rather than asking the project maintainers to figure them out on their own. You should write a descriptive title for your pull request and then include more details in the body of the pull request. If there are any related GitHub issues, make sure to mention those by number. The body can include markdown formatting, and you can click the preview tab to see how it will look. Let's add the details in the body of the pull request as edited the readme file to make the repo more precise for newbie users which are trying to contribute to it. On the right side, you may see a link to the project contributing guidelines. This is primarily worth reading through if you are submitting substantial code rather than just fixing a typo, but it may still be worth scanning through at this point. Below the pull request form, you will see a list of commits that you made in your branch, as well as diffs for all the files that you have changed. If everything looks good, click the green Create Pull Request button. You have now created a pull request, which is stored in the project's repository, not in the fork of your repository. You can check out the commits you just made, like this, and also the files you have changed by going here. And also we can see that our branch has no conflicts with the main branch. Like this, our branch has no conflicts with the base branch, as all checks have been passed successfully. It's a good idea to read through what you wrote as well as clicking on the commits tab and the file change tab to review the contents of your pull request. You can continue to add more commits to your pull request even after opening it. For example, the project maintainers may ask you to make some changes, or you may just think of a change that you forgot to include. If there are questions or discussion about your pull request from the project maintainers, you can add to the conversation using the comment box at the bottom of the pull request, like here. Okay, then we can click on the resolve conversation button once we have addressed all the specific requests from the project maintainers. If the project maintainers accept our pull request, congratulations, they will merge your proposed changes into the project's master branch and close your pull request. We can see that our pull request had been successfully accepted by the project maintainer and it has been merged with the project's main branch. We can see that. Okay. So pull request has been successfully merged and closed. Now we have been given the option to delete our branch from our fork since it's no longer of any use. We can choose to delete the branch option by accepting this delete branch option. So now it has been deleted. We should also delete the branch which we created from our local repository so that we don't accidentally start working in it the next time we want to make a contribution in this project. Firstly, let's switch to the main branch. Open the terminal and we can shift to the main branch using git checkout main. We have switched to the branch main. Okay, then we will be deleting the branch we created, that is git branch -d readme issue Karan Gupta. We have deleted the branch successfully. Now at this point our fork is out of synchronization with the project repository's main branch. To get it back in synchronization, we should first use git to pull the latest changes from upstream, the project repository, into our local repository. We can do this by using git pull upstream, just a second, upstream main. We can see that we have pulled up the changes from the upstream main branch. Okay, we have pulled the changes of the upstream remote main branch into our local repository. Okay, then moving forward, we will be pushing those changes from our local repository to the origin, our fork remote. Okay, we will be doing that by using the command git push origin main. And it's done. Okay, so first of all, congratulations on making your first open source contribution if you followed along. And please share a link to your first successful pull request in the comment section below. If you run into any unexpected problems, I would love to hear about it so that I can continue to improve this guide. Okay. One thing more. Since you have contributed to this project, you can see that you have been added as a contributor towards this project. Like I have contributed, so my name is in the contributors list. Okay, so you can do that too, and your name will appear in the contributors list of that particular project in which you will be contributing. Okay, so moving forward, congratulations. You just completed the standard fork clone edit push pull workflow that you will encounter often as a contributor. So keep contributing. May the open source be with you. So next we will be discussing some tips for contributing to the open source. If you are ready to make code contribution beyond just fixing typos, here are a few tips. Browse through repository's open issues, especially one labeled good first issues, to see if there is an issue you might be able to solve. If you are planning to contribute code that is unrelated to an existing issue, it's a good idea to open a new issue describing your proposal before starting working on it. The project maintainers might give you feedback that will help you shape your work, which will ultimately increase the likelihood that your pull request will be accepted. Read the project's contributing guide, which will usually be in the GitHub repository or the project's documentation. It will likely contain many helpful tips for how to successfully contribute to the project. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so moving forward. So that's all from my side. Thank you all for watching and connecting with us today. Have a great day ahead, guys. Stay safe and healthy. This is Karan Gupta from gdgjammu signing off. Have a nice day ahead, guys.